You are not going to live forever. You know this, and yet somehow in the way you actually move through your day, the way you treat your time, the way you treat the people around you, the way you keep postponing the things that actually matter, you are living as if you are. That is not a metaphor. That is a diagnosis. Think about the last week of your life, not the highlight reel you'd show someone, the actual week, the hours you don't account for, the conversations you half attended, the night you told yourself you'd do the important thing tomorrow and then tomorrow came and you said it again. The person you keep meaning to call, the thing you keep meaning to start, the version of yourself you keep meaning to become once things calm down, once you feel ready, once the timing is right. The timing is never going to be right. You are going to die with the timing still not right. And here's the part that cuts deepest, the part that makes this not just dark, but suffocating if you let yourself actually feel it. You already know this. This is not new information. You have known, somewhere below the noise, that you are burning through the only life you will ever get on things that do not matter to you. You have felt it, in the car alone, at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep, in the middle of a conversation where you suddenly become aware that you are performing rather than living, playing the role of yourself rather than actually being yourself. That feeling is not anxiety. That feeling is not depression. That feeling is the most honest thing about you surfacing through every layer of distraction and routine you have built to keep it quiet. Most people never stop running long enough to let it speak. Most people die that way, still running, still waiting, still believing somewhere underneath everything that the real life, the one that was supposed to happen, is still coming. It is not coming. There is only this exact moment, this body that is already aging, these people around you who are also aging, who will not always be here, who do not know fully, clearly, without ambiguity, what they mean to you. This one unrepeatable shot at consciousness in a universe that produced it by accident and will erase it without ceremony. What are you actually doing with it? Not what you were planning to do, not what you would do if things were different. Right now, today, in the life you were actually living, not the one you were waiting to start. If some part of you is tired of running, if some part of you has felt in the quiet moments that the life you are living and the life you are capable of living are not the same thing, then stay. Because what comes next is not inspiration, it is not motivation. It is the thing you already know, finally said out loud, without softening, without apology, without the comfortable distance that makes it easy to nod along and change nothing. This is going to be uncomfortable. It should be. There will be a last sunrise you see without knowing it's the last, a last sip of water, a final thought crossing your mind, and you won't recognize it as final. That's the part nobody talks about. You won't get a warning. You won't get to prepare the right face for it. The experience of being you will simply cease at some ordinary, unremarkable moment, perhaps too quiet to even be noticed by anyone nearby. This is not dramatization. It is statistics. It is physics. It is the shared destiny of everyone who has ever breathed. And yet, you live as if this truth were optional. You already know you're going to die. You've known it since childhood. And yet, and this is what nobody says directly, you don't actually believe it. Not in your body, not in the part of you that makes plans, nurses grudges, saves money for later, assumes there will be a later. You've attended funerals, said the right things, cried when it felt appropriate. But somewhere underneath all of that, there is a part of you operating as if you are somehow the exception. As if the universe that dissolves stars and collapses mountains is going to make a special accommodation for you. It isn't. You are not the exception. You are the rule. And the reason this is so hard to truly absorb isn't cowardice or stupidity. It's that your entire psychological architecture is built to prevent you from fully feeling this. The brain that evolved to help you survive is the same brain that refuses to fully compute its own termination. So it doesn't. It gives you a shallow acknowledgement. Yes, everyone dies. And then redirects you towards something more manageable. Your inbox, your ambitions, the argument you had yesterday that suddenly feels important again. That redirection is not an accident. It is the mechanism. Think about what you actually do with your days. Not what you tell people you do, not the edited version you present in your own internal monologue when you're feeling generous towards yourself. What you actually do. You scroll for hours that add up to days, that add up to years. You scroll through the lives of people you barely know, absorbing their curated highlight reels, feeling a slow background dissatisfaction you can't quite name. You argue about things that will not matter in 10 years. You catastrophize about risks that never materialize, while ignoring the only risk that absolutely will. You eat without tasting. You listen without hearing. You look at people you love and think about something else entirely. You postpone, that is the word. You postpone the conversations that actually need to happen. The phone call to someone who is getting older and will not be here forever. The apology you've been carrying for 3 years. The honest admission to yourself about what you actually want versus what you've been pretending to want. You postpone these things not because you lack time, but because confronting them would require you to confront the urgency behind them. And urgency requires acknowledging that there is a limit. You feel silence because silence is where it lives, the awareness, the one you can't outrun. So you fill it with noise, music while you drive, podcasts while you cook, your phone in your hand in every waiting room, every elevator, every moment that might otherwise become quiet enough that something real surfaces. You are, without consciously deciding to be, running from yourself at nearly all times. And the cruelest part is that you know this. You've known it. There have been moments, usually late at night or in the strange blankness after bad news, when you felt the full weight of it pressing in. The awareness that you are spending the only life you will ever get on things that don't matter to you. That you keep waiting for a future version of yourself to finally show up and live the way you always meant to. That version is not coming. There is only this one. And even now, even reading this, even feeling whatever you're feeling right now, part of your mind is already planning the exit, already composing the reason this doesn't fully apply to you, already preparing to close the tab and return to the exact same patterns. Because that is what the mechanism does. It absorbs the confrontation, neutralizes it, files it under thought-provoking content, and sends you back to sleep. Most people who feel genuinely moved by the idea of their own mortality, who feel that cold flash of recognition, that momentary crack in the usual numbness, do absolutely nothing with it. The feeling passes within hours, the routine resumes, and the next time the awareness surfaces, it will be just as easy to bury. You have done this before. The question is whether this time is different, not because of anything external, because some part of you right now is tired enough of the alternative to actually stop. Here is what death actually takes. Not just a heartbeat, not just a brain going quiet. What dies is an irreplaceable configuration, a specific set of memories that no one else holds in the same combination. The way you remember your grandmother's kitchen, the inside joke that no longer has anyone on both ends, the particular texture of your childhood fear, the thing your mother used to say when she was tired, the exact sensation of a specific summer afternoon that you have never been able to fully explain to another person and never will. All of that is going too. Every museum in you, every archive sensation, every half-remembered conversation, every private understanding you developed about how the world works will be destroyed completely. Not transferred, not preserved, destroyed. The world will continue without a single record of most of it. Every person around you is a universe of accumulated experience that one day will go completely dark. The old man on the bus carries 70 years of specific sensation, grief and joy and boredom and wonder. And when he dies, that entire interior world collapses without ceremony. The universe does not pause. The news cycle doesn't mention it. His seat on the bus is taken by someone else the next morning. That is what happens. That is what will happen to you. We should talk about what you're actually afraid of, because most people misidentify it. You're afraid of ceasing to exist. That much seems obvious. But underneath that is something even more uncomfortable. You're afraid that it won't have mattered, that the mark you leave will be smaller than the space you took up, that the people who love you will grieve and then adjust and then move forward, as people must, and that eventually the particular shape of your absence will fill in. That in 2 generations, almost no trace of you will remain. You are afraid not just of death, but of insignificance. And you manage this fear in ways you don't recognize as managing it. You work compulsively because achievement feels like proof. You overshare on social media because visibility feels like permanence. You join groups, movements, institutions, religions, not only because they give meaning, but because they feel bigger than you and therefore more durable. Ernest Becker called this the Immortality Project, the thing you build your life around that will somehow survive your death and carry your name forward. Status, legacy, children, art, God, the nation, the cause. It doesn't matter what form it takes, the function is identical. It is the psyche refusing to fully inhabit a finite body. And here's the thing Becker noticed that no one likes to hear. Most of what you call ambition, most of what you call purpose, most of what you call your deepest values is at least partially a death defense, a way of not sitting with the bare fact of your own impermanence.
This is not cynicism. It is not a reason to abandon your ambitions or your sense of meaning, but it is worth knowing what is driving the car. Because when you build your entire life around an immortality project, when your sense of worth is completely fused to your productivity, your status, your legacy, you have handed the only life you have to a fear you never directly confronted. You are living defensively, spending your days trying to outrun something you refuse to look at directly. And the tragic irony is that no immortality project actually works. The status erodes, the legacy fades faster than you think. The institution you dedicated yourself to will restructure and forget you. The children you raised will have their own lives, their own struggles, their own fears. They will carry you imperfectly and partially, and that is as it should be. Nothing you build will fully survive you. Nothing you leave will keep your name alive forever. The universe is not keeping score. The only question is what you do with that truth, whether it breaks you open or breaks you down. Now let's talk about the people around you, because your fear of your own death is in some ways the easier one. There are people in your life right now who function as invisible structural beams. You don't notice them the way you notice them when they're gone. Your mother, if she's still alive. Do you understand yet that there will be a last phone call? Not as abstraction, as reality. There will be a specific, ordinary phone call in which she sounds fine and you are distracted and you say you'll talk later, and there is no later. And for the rest of your life, you will think about what you would have said if you had known. Or your father, or your oldest friend, or the person whose presence you take so completely for granted that you have stopped really looking at them. Grief does not work the way people describe. It is not a clean sequence of stages. It is a discontinuous cognitive error. Your brain has spent years, maybe decades, modeling another person, their responses, their humor, their judgment, their way of moving through a room. That model doesn't update when they die. It keeps running. You keep turning to tell them something before you remember. You hear their voice in your head completing sentences. You reach for your phone to call them. The external world has changed. The internal world hasn't caught up. And the gap between those two things is where grief actually lives, in that specific horror of reaching for someone and finding nothing, over and over, for months, for years. People you love will die, some of them while you still have things unsaid, some of them before you understood what you were to each other, some of them while you were in the middle of an argument that was never resolved and now never will be. The things you didn't say will outlast everything. And here is what nobody prepares you for. The guilt is not about the big things. It is almost never about the big things. It is about the ordinary ones. The Tuesday you were too tired to really listen. The visit you canceled because something came up. The way you looked at your phone while they were talking. The joke you didn't laugh at. The moment you could have stayed a little longer and didn't.
These are the things that come back, not the grand failures. The small, daily, forgettable evidence that you were somewhere else when you were supposed to be there. That you treated the time with them as infinite when it wasn't. That you saved your full presence for later, for when you had more energy, for when things were less busy, and later turned out to be never. Right now, today, there are words you haven't said that should be said. There is a call you haven't made, a person who does not know with full clarity what they mean to you. And you keep not making that call, not because you don't care, but because care feels infinite and time feels guaranteed. And there is always, always tomorrow. There isn't. Not always. Not for everyone. What happens to consciousness is where honesty requires the most discipline, because the temptation to fill the void with comfortable certainty runs in both directions. The materialist certainty, death is lights out, full stop, no remainder, is emotionally satisfying in its cleanness. Epicurus found it comforting. While you live, death is absent. When death arrives, you are not. No suffering, no void, just absolute absence of experience. But here is what that position quietly skips over. We do not actually understand consciousness well enough to be certain of this. We can map which brain regions activate during specific experiences, we can measure the electrical signatures of thought, but we cannot explain why subjective experience exists at all. Why there is something it is like to be you, rather than just a biological process executing in the dark. And into that gap, no one gets to pour confident certainty. Not the materialists and not anyone else. We do not know what happens to the experience of being you when your brain stops. That sentence should sit with you, not as comfort and not as terror, as honesty. And notice how uncomfortable that uncertainty is. Notice how quickly the mind reaches for a position, either the clean materialist nothing or some version of continuation, heaven, reincarnation, dissolution into the whole. Notice how desperately you want to resolve it, because sitting in genuine not knowing about what happens to you after you die is one of the hardest things a conscious mind can do. It is designed to resist that question. It will reach for almost any answer just to stop the freefall. But the freefall is the honest place. And most people never spend a single sustained minute there. They have a position, inherited or constructed or borrowed from someone else, and they hold it like a life raft, without ever asking whether it floats. What we do know is this: the atoms composing your body were forged inside stars that exploded billions of years before your birth. The iron in your blood came from supernovae. The carbon in your cells has been in ancient forests, in ocean depths, in organisms you cannot imagine. When you dissolve, the elements continue, entering other structures, other forms, other brief organizations of matter. You were never separate from the universe. You were the universe temporarily arranged into something that could look back at itself and wonder. There is something that happens to people who have come very close to death that is difficult to describe without sounding like a cliché. The triviality becomes visible, not as a motivational insight, as a perceptual shift. Things that previously seemed important, the grudge, the status game, the carefully maintained image, the obsessive replaying of old humiliations, suddenly lose their charge. They look small. The background radiation of mortality has moved to the foreground, and in its light, the artificial urgencies collapse. What remains when the trivialities fall away is not comfortable. It is frightening, because what remains is the actual question: what am I actually doing with this? You've been given, through no merit of your own, through a chain of biological improbabilities so long it defies calculation, the experience of consciousness, of perceiving color and music and the faces of people you love, of wanting things and sometimes getting them, of grief and laughter and the particular warmth of being known by another person. No other arrangement of matter in the known universe is confirmed to have this. The number of things that had to go right from the formation of your solar system to the particular night your parents happened to be together approaches infinity. And yet here you are, having the experience. And most of what you're doing with it is waiting for it to get better, waiting for the promotion, waiting until you're less anxious, waiting until you've lost the weight, paid off the debt, resolved the relationship, arrived at the version of yourself that feels ready to actually live. There's always a reason the real living is scheduled for later, and later keeps becoming now, which becomes later again. Meanwhile, the days stack up, the weeks, the years, and the experience, the only one you get, is being managed and postponed and half attended to while you wait for conditions that will never fully arrive. Let's say something no one is supposed to say out loud. Most people die quietly disappointed. Not dramatically, not in crisis, quietly. With a resignation so deep they've stopped calling it disappointment and started calling it maturity. They gave up on the real thing, whatever it was, somewhere in their 30s or 40s, and they built a perfectly reasonable life on top of the burial site, and they became very good at not looking down. They're functioning, they have routines, they have people who love them. And somewhere underneath all of it, there's a person who stopped believing their life would ever feel like what they imagined it could feel like. And they decided, without ever quite saying it to themselves directly, that this was fine, that this was what growing up meant, that the gap between who they are and who they always meant to become was just the natural tax of living in a real world. They made peace with it. And the peace is the saddest part, because they are not unhappy enough to change and not happy enough to be honest about it. They live in the middle, comfortable enough to stay, dissatisfied enough to feel it as a low hum beneath everything, and they will live there for the rest of their lives, waiting for something they stopped believing in without noticing they stopped. When they die, not dramatically, but on some ordinary Tuesday, nobody will say their life was wasted, because it wasn't, not technically. They were good people. They worked, they showed up, they loved imperfectly like all people do. But there will be no accounting for the version of them that never got to exist, the book they never wrote, the place they never went, the person they were too afraid to become, the thing they swallowed so many times it stopped feeling like swallowing. No one grieves the unlived life. There's no funeral for the person you were supposed to be. And that is the part that should terrify you more than death itself. Death takes what you were. A wasted life takes what you could have been. And it takes it quietly, incrementally, in ways that never feel urgent enough to stop. One reasonable compromise at a time. One more year of waiting for the right moment. One more decision to stay inside the familiar shape of a life that fits like a cage you've learned to call a home. You know the thing you're not doing. You know the person you keep not calling. You know the version of yourself you keep scheduling for later. And the darkest truth of all, darker than death, darker than grief, darker than simply ceasing to exist, is that later is not a place, it is a direction, and you have been walking toward it your entire life, and one day you will run out of road. There will be no dramatic reckoning, no final clarity, just the ordinary end of an ordinary day that happened to be the last one. And the unlived thing will go with you, unnoticed, unmourned, as if it had never been possible at all. There will be a version of your death where you look back, and in that looking back, the categories will be different than they are now. The arguments you nursed, the time you spent managing impressions, the risks you didn't take because they were uncomfortable, the people you loved incompletely because full love felt too exposed. You already know this is true. You have moments, when you're honest, where you can see your own life with something like that end-of-life clarity, where the noise falls away and what remains is stark. This is what matters and this is what I'm doing, and they are not the same thing. That clarity is available to you now, not only at the end. But here is what makes it so hard to act on. The ordinary day does not feel like a crisis. It feels like Tuesday. The urgency that death creates in theory does not automatically translate into the present moment, which is always just a normal moment full of normal distractions and normal reasons to defer. The gap between knowing you will die and actually living differently because of it is where most people live their entire lives, in that gap, knowing and not changing, feeling and not moving. Closing that gap is the hardest thing a person can do, not because it requires dramatic action, because it requires honesty about what you actually want, about what you are actually doing, about who you are actually being when nobody is watching and you have no reason to perform. You don't control when this stops. You don't know if you have 50 years or 5 or 1. Nobody does. The person who died last night probably had plans for next week. But within what is possible, within the actual interval you have been given, you control what you do with it. Not in a motivational poster way, in the most literal, concrete, daily way. The
the next conversation you have, the call you make or don't make, the truth you tell or continue to swallow, the moment you choose to actually be present in rather than deferring to a future version of yourself who is always eternally about to start living. So the question, the only question that the fact of your death actually leaves you with, is not what happens after you are gone. The universe doesn't need your opinion on that. The question is here, now, in this body that is already in the process of wearing out. What are you doing while you are still here? Not what you are planning to do, not what you would do if things were different. What are you doing today in the texture of your actual existence with the consciousness you have been given by accident and will lose for certain? That question has no comfortable answer, and it is the only one that matters.